I hope you all got a chance to check out the podcast yesterday. I thought the podcast that I dropped yesterday, it was only about half an hour. I thought it was, I think it's interesting to get into the head of people who do bad things. I think it's interesting to understand why they do it, because I think as somebody who was victimized by a cult, and I think as somebody who survived a cult experience, growing up in a cult, I have spent an awful lot of time trying to figure out why that all happened to me, and passing that information on to you as I get it. And maybe I'm right sometimes, and maybe I'm wrong other times, but I'm doing, just trying to figure things out. And I've always found it to be the most interesting thing to try to figure out why people do that, why they victimize other people, and why would somebody spend their time, spend their life, spend their energy, preying on other human beings, and there we go. And I think it has to do with the fact that predators are living in their world and in their own world in such a total way that other people just don't really exist for them. It's like they're living in a permanent video game, or a virtual world or something. Anyway, I just find it interesting to break that down. And this week's podcast was an effort to try to get into the head of people like Jim Jones and L. Ron Hubbard and Donald Trump. And I know some of y'all just hate it when I do that, but he's just, kind of the best example of that these days. Yeah. So as I mentioned, people will start coming on. I know I'm just sort of filling time a little bit right now at the beginning of the show. I'm probably going to chop off after this thing finalizes today. I'll probably chop this off because YouTube changed up the UI on me again. YouTube seems to be doing everything that it can these days to try to make life hell for its own creators, including changing how you go live. So I, normally, like I said, I would hit go live and then have to hit another button and actually just start streaming. So anyway, we started the show. Let's go ahead and stop screwing around. This is Critical Q&A number 539, and I'm very, very happy to be joined by you guys. Now, I do have to close my door, though, because I totally wasn't set up for starting that. All right, we're back. So today is Sunday, April 12th, in the year of our Lord, 2026. Oh, the joy. I didn't even bring it with me into the room here. And I need to go get it. Like I said, we started the show a little earlier than I intended to. So again, I'm going to be right back because I need to show you something. All right. This is the one and only printed copy of my new book, What Now? A Practical Guide for Life After a Cult. I just got this a couple days ago. To say that I am excited, to say that I am pumped, to say that, these are just, there are no words to describe how excited I am right now to have written all of this and get it out to you guys. And hope that it makes a difference for you and for people out there. I've thought very quickly, because I just got this in my hands, I thought I would show you some of it, because this is going to be available in a week for purchase by you guys. You're going to be able to get it as an ebook and as a print on demand. And I thought just very quickly I would go through. There's an introduction. It's quite long. There's a lot in the intro to this book. And then there are 20 chapters. So let me just tell you what they are real fast. The first chapter, let's talk cults. Chapter 2, your basic needs. Chapter 3 is on coercive control. Then there's a chapter on generational experience, trauma, boundaries, therapy, understanding for recovery, which is about psychoeducation and learning, hypnosis and trance, memory, critical thinking, emotions, ethics and morals, the REM model, of course, a whole chapter on that, empathy, community, religion, mental health and growth, responsibility, big tough one, and victims and victimizers. And then my final note at the end. And I have a list of suggested readings of books that I think a person should go on to after reading this. This is far from the only thing somebody needs to survive a cult or get past one. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in here. So I just wanted to kind of promote it some more, let you guys know that it's out there, and I'm very, 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 very pumped that it's finally 2 years. You know, when you work on something for 2 years, getting it written, getting it put together, getting it compiled, stylizing, formatting, doing all the stuff. It's a labor of love, and it's a labor for sure. You know, it's a lot of work. Anyway, so here we are. And so here we are. I don't know how to put this up where y'all can see it. Maybe I'll try that. Does that work at all? I don't know if that's gonna. Anyway, okay, let's go ahead and set up the Q&A because I got so excited about all of that stuff. Let me start the Q&A. Please put your questions here under this box or whatever it is. Okay, good. Start Q&A. All right, good. So now we've got the Q&A box set up. So please go ahead and put your questions for me in the box. I will answer anything you would like to know. I'm going to make an effort this week. And my personality and my temperament doesn't allow for, long-term resolution making. But I'm going to try today to not be so ranty as I have been for the last few weeks. I've been very, very upset about the state of things, and I know it bleeds over into my work all over the place, and it bleeds over into my social media posts and all my stuff because it's a very upsetting time. And I'm doing my best to keep a level head, especially when I'm on camera, but it's sometimes hard. And so, I know you all roll with it and everything, but I am going to try to do my best to be a little bit more professional today. But do feel free to ask me anything you'd like about anything, especially when it comes to topics I really can expound on correctly or factually, and I'll do my best to do that and answer what you all have. I have one question this week in from the email as well, so we will flip over to that too. But before we get into your questions, let's go ahead and hit up our Fig Cam for this week. This is our little bundle of furry joy here. This was him probably about 15 minutes ago. I shot this in right here where I'm sitting. We started in the studio space and walked down the hall, and I was just trying to see what he would do. And he dutifully this is what he's like when I'm walking around the house anywhere doing anything, is he just follows me around. And he's just, like I said, our little bundle of furry joy. Fig is got a little haircut this week, and he's, I guess, coming up on I think he just had his 8 months birthday, and there it is, and he is so bitey right now. I swear to God, this guy views the world through his teeth or through his tongue or mouth or something just as much as he does his eyes, because it's hilarious how much he tries to just bite. and not viciously, not hard. He's not trying to come around clamping down or ripping your your flesh out or anything. He just wants to get his mouth on it, and it's hilarious. But sometimes it's a little sharp too. We're trying to put some discipline in, tell him, draw some boundaries for him, no, don't do this, right? But at the same time, you just want to give him all the freedom he wants, but can't give it all to him because he will run with it. But anyway, there's our little bundle of furry joy this week. All right. Now, as your questions come in, I had things I wanted to talk about, and of course now I can't remember any of them. Oh, the first thing I wanted to share with you guys. I've been meaning to drop this joke for for over a week now. In Scientology, they have released these new kids courses and books, and of course they are now pushing that these books be sold to every single Scientologist, multiple copies, as many boxes as you can get. I guess it costs about $300 for a box of these books. And I guess they're course packs or books or whatever. I haven't actually seen inside them yet. But they cover the full range and gamut of Scientology basics, and they're for children. But even if you don't have children, you're supposed to buy a set of these books, or 5 or 10 of them, and, send them to a library or something. Or, Scientology is just doing its latest cash grab and using children as the excuse and reason to do that. And now we have kids doing success stories and talking about how able they are when they're, 7 years old. It's a little ridiculous, but the little joke here is this is the golden age for the new generation. Which is abbreviated, you have golden age of tech, GAT, you have golden age of knowledge, which is GAC, and you have the golden age for a new generation, which is gang. They're ganging up on the kids. So it's a stupid little dad joke for you. On the point of something that I thought I wanted to comment on before I forget. I've been seeing this for a long time on social media, and I'm going to. This is having to do with something very specific about our president, Donald Trump, and I want to point something out about him and about the situation that we're in right now. There are an inordinate number, an unwarranted, ridiculously large number of people in the world who I think mistakenly believe that Donald Trump is somehow compromised or is somehow being blackmailed or, pushed through undue influence or extortion or something into doing what he's doing right now, that somehow Russia, Putin, Netanyahu, have the goods on him, that somehow people have things on him that he doesn't want made public, and this is influencing him or controlling him in a way as to get him to say, start dropping bombs on Iran, or, shut down this investigation or shut down that thing or do these pardons or whatever. And while it is certainly true that Donald Trump is endlessly influenceable through lots of different means in terms of pushing, him in certain directions. Any human being is influenceable. But the idea that he needs to be blackmailed or extorted into what he's doing is, I think, patently ridiculous and a silly idea. And I wish it would go away. Because Donald Trump is perfectly happy to do what he's doing. He doesn't need to be blackmailed. He's not living a life now. Maybe in the past, prior to being the president, he had a fixers, and, the whole mob boss thing and the whole structure around him, keeping him going. But I think the point I was trying to make, or one of the many points I was trying to make in my podcast this week, is you don't have to blackmail a predator into preying on people. You don't have to blackmail Jim Jones to do what he did. Nobody had to blackmail L. Ron Hubbard into becoming a cult leader or a horrible person or into hurting or abusing people. Nobody had to do that to Keith Raniere. Nobody had to do anything like that to these cult leaders. So why do you imagine that somebody has to do that to Donald Trump? He's the same kind of personality, and he acts with the same kind of vicious intent and random stomach impulse-driven behavior, right, that L. Ron Hubbard and Jim Jones and Keith Raniere follow. And to a great degree, I believe David Miscavige is on the same narcissistic spectrum. And one point that I didn't make during the show is in my podcast that I wish I had made. The only thing I wish I had put in there is that I believe my take on narcissistic personality disorder is that it is a spectrum. There are people who are more narcissistic than others, more deeply into the disorder than others. And I think over time you can, sink deeper into that disorder or condition. And I think Donald Trump is about all the way down that ladder that you can go. So I think that there's shades of this kind of thinking or behavior that I talked about in the podcast, where, it's all impulse-driven behavior. It's not agenda-driven, consequential thinking. It's not logical thinking like you and I do, where we stop ourselves from doing something bad because we know there will be consequences. The predatory mind doesn't think that way. There are no consequences, and it's up to the people around them, especially when it comes to cult leaders or presidents. It's up to this whole structure that builds up around them, their enablers, who actually bring the logic and arguments and reason and try to make it all make sense, even if it doesn't make any sense. They struggle very, very much to make it make sense. And if you look at, the daily task of the White House press secretary for the last 10 years, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like these are people who are struggling to make it all make sense when it doesn't make any sense at all. There is no intelligence or agenda behind, what's going on. It's all just, pretty much as random as if you gave it to a pack of children, and that's, I think, a really good way of thinking about what's going on right now in the minds of these of our president and in the minds of these predatory cult leader narcissist types, right? For me, this brings a great deal of clarity. It brings a great deal of understanding to a situation that people really struggle to understand. I don't think most people's ranting and raving about Trump is really an effort to understand Trump. I think people are just mouthing off because they don't know what else to say or how to think about this because it's so crazy. But for those who are interested, right, there are answers. And I think the answers are interesting. It may well be, it's pretty conjectural when you start talking about what's going on in somebody else's head. So obviously there's a degree of conjecture to, that podcast and to, what Vod Vexor has put out, what I've put out. But I think it's educated conjecture at least, and I hope y'all will consider what was out there. Okay, so that all being said, I know I'm trying to keep my mouth on the microphone because I know it will go off if I go away from it. I want to look up something here real fast in answering a question from someone, because I've heard this term. Oh, that. Okay. Got it. Yes. Oh, wow. There's even a Wikipedia page on it. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and start answering questions. We're here. Let's do it. Might as well, right? So first question comes from X-Cyan. He says, I liked your podcast Saturday. Thank you. You mentioned that a narcissist will often launch a project with great fanfare and abandon it the moment it gets hard. I did say that. Does that help explain TACO? And that's what I needed to look up, which is an abbreviation for Trump always chickens out, which is hilarious to me because there's actually literally a whole Wikipedia page on that phrase, the pejorative description of the perceived tendency of U.S. President Donald Trump to make threats only to later delay or renege on them as a way to increase time for negotiations, allow markets to rebound, and avert backlash. And apparently this term was popularized in May 2025 after many threats and reversals during the trade war that he initiated with all of the tariffs, which are still ongoing, by the way. None of that's gone away. In case you're wondering why the economy is going insane, well, that might have something to do with it. And I don't think we've ever seen a better example of exactly the kind of things I was talking about in my podcast than we see in Donald Trump. That's why the analysis is so biting and hard and accurate. But I think by extension, the same thinking, again, applies to these other cult leaders and brings a lot of clarity to the picture of why it's so chaotic and why it is so random seeming. And so, okay, so Donald Trump, is this why he backs out of things? Yeah, of course it is. Donald Trump lives in a world of his own creation. All narcissists do to one degree or another. And we're not just talking about a few illusions or delusions or, wishful thinking. We're talking about a full-blown artificial construct of the world that they live in. Their connection with reality is tenuous at best. And so when reality bites, when reality comes crashing in on their, universe, so to speak, on their constructed reality, well, reality doesn't, objective reality, like we've talked about, right? Doesn't give a shit what you think, doesn't care what you believe, doesn't care about your ideas of how things should or shouldn't be. Your morality, your sense of order and right and wrong means absolutely nothing to the real reality of things. If you crash markets, you can expect downstream consequences that are not good. If you take advantage and criminally abuse our systems for long enough, there will be consequences. And those consequences aren't going to stop at your front door because you're rich, powerful, influential, or think you're all that. The world doesn't give a fuck what you think about yourself. I'm being profane again, right? So walk that back a minute. So it doesn't care. And the narcissist ends up having to deal with that fallout that comes crashing in. And then they have to do Darvo. That's what Darvo's all about, is dealing with reality crashing in, right? That the predator is taking advantage and hurting people and harming people and doing what they're doing, preying on people. And then somebody pushes back, fights back. No, this is not okay. No, you can't do that. No, 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 no. And when the narcissist meets up with that resistance, the only thing they know how to do is double and triple down on what they've been doing, right? By denying that they did anything wrong, attacking the person coming at them, and then reversing that victim and offender, right? They're trying to play the same game they've always been playing. No, I'm actually the one who deserves all the sympathy and support and influence and power, and you're nothing and no one. And this is what they tried. This is their level of, you could say, negotiation tactics. Donald Trump is infamous for art of the deal and for his negotiation tactics. Well, this is how he does it. Is he makes these unreasonable, crazy ass demands, and then he knows he's not going to get that, but he's going to get something. But now, in his demented narcissistic state, right, he believes that every whim he has must be fulfilled, must be acted upon, and everybody has to support him. And of course, you see that's not working at all for him right now, but he's going to keep doing it because he doesn't have any idea of how else to act or how else to be. So it's really that meeting of reality with Trump's world. You have Trump world, then you have the real world. And when they clash, you get this taco phenomena, he chickens out. Well, it's him meeting reality is what that is. Unfortunately, there's a point where that might not be his operating pattern anymore. There are different, I'm not an expert in all of this stuff, but what I do know is that narcissists do get worse, and can even become violently destructive. And I'd say Trump pretty much, is moving in that direction, or is there. So I don't know how much longer. In other words, I don't know how much longer we can count on him chickening out and backing off. There might come a point where he just refuses to do that anymore and keeps going even crazier and crazier, right? Like launching a ground assault in Iran. Who would do such a thing at this point? Trump would, right? Because he has to be right about what he's doing. That much he does understand and calculate. I think that's how that works. Okay. Oh yeah, we definitely, thank you, Pie and Grin. Yeah, we definitely have a Kong for Fig, and we give him peanut butter and stuff in it all the time. But it's always a balance, trying to work out that Kong discipline thing, reward. It's just an interesting thing, and we way overbalance on the reward part. Hopefully not spoiling our little puppy in the process, but all right. Oh, okay. Angry Choad's asking for a breakdown on this. What's the deal with the new Scientology deal targeting kids? Is it a desperation move? If so, can you explain why? What do you think about fiber supplements? And would you wear hold chains? Why or why not? Okay, thank you for that, Medley Choad. Let's pontificate on this kids thing first. It's worth, looking at. Scientology is a cult in decline, numerically. Monetarily, they're doing fine. Existentially, they're doing fine right now from David Miscavige's perspective. But there is a perception problem, right? There is a reality problem within Scientology that it's not doing what it says it's doing. It's not growing. It's not the fastest growing religion in the world. It's not overtaking or clearing the planet. And Scientologists can see that. Whether they do see that, they can see it. In other words, there's a potential for them to see it. Empty parking lots, empty org buildings, not a lot of people coming in, So they have to really massage the numbers that they have and try to make, spin it the best way that they can. But when you have years and years of declining attendance, membership, etc., and all of the rhetoric in your group is all about how it, bigger, better, bigger, better. Reality, it's a problem. Okay, it's a problem. And so one of the ways Miscavige thought to solve this problem was, well, let's pack the org with all these kids. And there, as I mentioned on my show with Tony Friday, right, or yesterday, when there's no demand. Nobody was asking for this. There were not Scientology parents like, oh, I really need these Scientology courses for my kids. And there was certainly no demand of any kind from the outside world for Scientology to indoctrinate their children in Scientology basics, right? This is the failure of Miscavige with this release is he's releasing a series of products that are only interesting to Scientologists. It has no real world marketability. Nobody in the real world wants their children learning about the ARC triangle, because nobody in the real world knows what the hell an ARC triangle is. So when they see a children's book that says ARC triangle, that doesn't mean or register anything. You can't take that book, stick it on a shelf in, Barnes and Noble and expect it to go anywhere. Nobody's going to know what the hell that is or to even pick up, much less, be, do, have, or the reactive mind or the parts of man, right? Or the parts of the mind, which are other books in this series. There's a book, Happiness, right? How to be happy or something. I mean, what? Those books are a dime a dozen out there. The way to happiness is not the way to happiness. So there's no marketability. I don't think there's a demand or much of a marketability in these books as they are presented to the big wide world. So these books going up on shelves in the library isn't going to go anywhere. These books going up on shelves in regular bookstores aren't going to go anywhere. They are only of interest to Scientologists and not really that interested either. There are some Scientology parents who are super keen to get their kids educated on Scientology. There are others who are not. They're not all on board with, let me shove this down my kid's throat. I know that for a fact. There are Scientology parents who are not that way. So this doesn't even have a full demand or applicability within the world of Scientology. So why do it? Because those course rooms are empty. Because those orgs are empty. Because those kids aren't interested in Scientology. Because more kids are leaving Scientology than are sticking with Scientology, as represented by the numbers, right? And a small percentage of those kids are going on staff or going into the Sea Org, but most of them are not. And there is no love toward kids in Scientology. The entire, as we broke down, right, as I broke down for you guys a couple weeks ago, the history of Scientology, of children in Scientology, is one of continuing abuse. Children have never really been appreciated, loved, cared for, or wanted in the Scientology space. They're usually an annoyance and something that gets in the way of people, adults, trying to do their Scientology, because you have to be on the course room or you have to be in the auditing room, and you can't bring your kid along with you, right? Now there's this idea, well, I get these kids courses. Nah, man, the kids aren't going to be in the course rooms for hours and hours and hours like the adults are. They're not interested. And this isn't the solution to that problem either. So it doesn't solve any problems for Scientology parents, really. Maybe indoctrination level problems, but that was never really much of an issue. It was never hard to teach a kid about the ARC triangle if you're a Scientology parent. It was never a challenge to teach your kid the comm formula about communication, right? It's the way Scientology has it. If you're a Scientology parent, these are not difficult concepts to express to children. So it's not like, again, there was much demand for this. So why do it? Because we need to stat push those kids into those seats, into those course rooms, so that we can get our numbers back up. And that's why I believe it's a pure desperation move. There are very few, I don't think I can see any real selling points for these materials. Unless you're a hardcore Scientologist, right? Who really, really wants to indoctrinate your kid standardly, meaning whatever the church tells you to do, because there is no such thing as standard tech. Standardly in Scientology is whatever the hell David Miscavige says it is. There are no standards in that group and haven't been for forever. So anyway, so those are the reasons why I think it's a desperation move. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. As far as what I think about fiber supplements, I think that when they're necessary and your body is lacking in fiber, then it's a wonderful thing. And if your body is not lacking in fiber and your digestive system and other systems are working great, then I don't think it's necessary that you take supplements. Would you wear hold chains? You guys confuse me sometimes. I don't know what hold chains are, but I'm going to guess that they're not something fun. Let's see what it says. Gold chains. No. Hold chains. Nope. Don't know what that is. Holding chains. Yeah. I have no idea what that is. So I'm not sure how to answer that. Okay. Carry on here. Thank you, Choad. J. Cole, after OT8 and you get superpowers, is there anything else to do? Tune up, BT checks, or just write checks? Okay, good question. Okay. The Scientology bridge to total freedom ends at OT level 8. There are unreleased levels 9 through 15 that are supposed to come out at some point, but those are just made up nonsense, and they never did exist. And so there is no OT 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 to do. They literally don't exist at all. L. Ron Hubbard never wrote them. David Miscavige just invented that idea that there should be 15 OT levels and put it on a bridge, and there you go. And so now we endlessly talk about the release of the upper, the unreleased OT levels. So you only get up to OT level 8. And if you get up to OT 8 as a Scientologist, you pay all your money, you jump through all the hoops, you spend all the years, you do all the work, and you beeline up to OT 8. Is that it? Is that all there is? Not by a long shot. If you haven't done all of the training in Scientology to become an auditor and administrator, there's all that training too, for the public, and data series evaluator, and there's a ton of other coursework you can do. Like, there's a lot of classwork in Scientology. All the books have classes connected to them. There are all of these auditor training levels you can do. There's a ton of life improvement courses, technical specialist courses that train you in all the different specialist rundowns you can audit on somebody as an auditor. So you can do your basic auditor training, and then you do all this specialist training. So there's years and years and years of coursework you can do in Scientology. And Miscavige constantly is rolling out new stuff and getting rid of stuff and bringing out other stuff. For example, 30 years ago, there was a course called the Key to Life course, which is big. It takes like a couple years to get through. And it was a big, big deal. And everybody in Scientology was doing it. And now nobody's doing it. You can't do the Key to Life course pretty much anywhere. Right? Good luck trying to do Key to Life in Scientology these days. You will not be able to find it available to you. Same with the St. Hill Special Briefing course, which is the biggest course in Scientology. It was L. Ron Hubbard's baby. And Miscavige had that thing collecting mothballs for 20 plus years now. Right? Just can't do it. So eventually Miscavige will roll those things out again. And then you can spend time doing that, Mr. OT8, right? While you're waiting for Miscavige to come up with OT 9, 10, 11, whatever, and pimp you something else. So yes, there are lots of other things you can spend your time doing. There are also a few other audited actions you can receive as an OT8. You can get more false purpose rundown if you want, although by the time you're OT8, you've probably had your fill of FPRD. But you can address more of your evil intentions across your dynamics with more FPRD security checking. You can just pay for hours and hours and hours of that. It really doesn't have a bottom. There really is no end to the amount of FPRD you could get. You could also do the L rundowns, as in the letter L stands for list. And there is L10, L11, and L12. And those are super, super expensive. You can only get them at Flag in Clearwater. But you can go pay your money, and you could do those L rundowns. Those are supposed to supercharge you and put you in a state of permanent exteriorization from your body 24/7. So you're supposed to become, pretty supercharged when you do those L rundowns. And it's not OT material. It's different. The L's are different. And there are other flag only audited actions or rundowns that you can receive. There's something called a dynamic sort out assessment. There's the new vitality rundown. There's about 8 or 9 flag only audited rundowns you can get that obviously you can only do there. So OT8s could do some or all of those rundowns, right? I don't know. I can't remember right now off the top of my head all of them, but those were a couple. You could go do that cause resurgence rundown where you're, running around the light pole on the top floor of the flag building. You can go do that. So there are lots of things you can still do as a Scientologist after you've gotten to the level of OT8. All right. Let's see what we got here. Okay. X-Scion asks, when you left Scientology, did you have to go through the steps you talked about to regain your authentic self? Yes. Yeah, to a degree I did. In fact, one of the reasons I made that video is because I wanted people to understand that ex-cult members have a process to go through. And that process involves a lot of different things, but almost uniformly it's going to involve a coming to Jesus moment, a reckoning with yourself and how you're relating to the world. And I say you, even though maybe I should say me, because this has everything to do with how all of us recover from a cult experience. I've talked from almost the very beginning of getting out of Scientology. I was writing articles and talking about the fact that narcissism is kind of contagious in these groups. You come out of these groups and you're kind of a raging narcissist. And your attention is all focused on you. Everything is about you. Okay, let me again back up and rephrase. When I got out of Scientology, everything was about me. I couldn't conceive of other people the way that I do now. I didn't think about other people. It wasn't that I didn't have a theory of mind. In other words, there's a developmental stage every human being or most human beings hit around 3 to 5 years old, called theory of mind, where you come to realize other minds exist. When you're a very, very young baby, you're not aware of the fact that other minds and other independent entities exist in the world. Everything is there for you. Very narcissistic, right? This is a very, very I'm all there is, kind of solipsistic kind of point of view. This babies, right? Babies. And over time, you come to realize, wait a minute, other minds exist and they're independent. They have their own thinking, their own motivations, their own ideas, separate from me. They're not just part of my universe or my world, right? And that's not exactly what I mean. I had that. Most people do. It's very, very, very rare for somebody to not experience that between the ages of 3 and 5. But when you're in a cult, you're emulating the cult leader. And if the cult leader is a raging narcissist, and they almost always are, then you're emulating a human predator. And you are making out that their behavior and their way of thinking and their emotional regulation and their view of the world should be yours. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody in a cult is trying to carbon copy every single thing about the cult leader, but let's be real. This is hero worship. This is adoration, right? And you hold this figure in awe. That's what makes them a cult leader. If you didn't hold them in that position of authority and ultimate truth, then they wouldn't be a cult leader. So this is part of the package. And part of the experience is that this is your symbolic representation of greatness, of authority, of truth. For however that manifests, whether it's in Landmark, where Werner Erhard is just supposed to be this amazing, amazing guy, and he's not a god, and he's not pretending to be, but he's the epitome of all of these values and ideas and principles and morals and all this great stuff that you're aspiring to. Who's your role model when you're in the cult? Who are you supposed to be looking at or idolizing or role modeling after? The leader. So that puts you in a real tough spot because you're emulating and taking after, somebody who's a real fucking piece of shit, right? A narcissist. And a malignant narcissist is, specifically the kind I was talking about in my podcast. I took after L. Ron Hubbard. I talked like him. I tried to think like him. All Scientologists do. You're not really much of a Scientologist if you don't do that. Keeping Scientology working is crystal clear. The TRs and model auditing tapes, the entire way that you be a Scientologist demands that you hold L. Ron Hubbard in a state of adoration and authority. So why would you not want to take after that person, right? I'm not trying to make this out to be some Simple Simon thing, but over time, when you're raised in a group like this, right, you get some pretty damn weird ideas, and this is definitely one of them. And it's not just a belief, it's a whole attitude, it's a whole way of existing. It's more than just an idea you believe. So when I came out of Scientology, I didn't know how to relate to people. But I had told myself for decades, since I was a teenager, that I had the upper leg in every conversation I was ever in. That I had the upper hand against any non-Scientologist and most Scientologists. That's what the training is supposed to give you. And I was very trained in Scientology. And I took all that training really seriously. And I developed a structural view of the world that had me on a pedestal. And everybody in Scientology affirmed that pedestal every time we talked. We would talk amongst ourselves about how great we were. And if you were a Scientologist, you may remember conversations like that. We're the most uptoned people in this room. We're the only people here. I used to have literal conversations with other Scientologists that sounded just like this. You look around walking on the street, or you're staring out the window at people walking by, and you're like, those poor schleps, they don't know shit. Those idiots, those fucking, those losers, they don't know what we know. They don't have what we have. They're so low tone. They're so banky. It creates such an us versus them. And this was something I lived in for years. So how could I possibly relate honestly and openly and compassionately or empathetically with anybody when I had this huge attitude problem and felt incredibly self-righteous about it because of all the pumped up knowledge and authority that I thought I had? And that's how you act like and think like a narcissist, even if you don't necessarily have NPD as a clinical disorder or neurological condition. And because it becomes a habit. And that's the kind of habit I was talking about in the podcast. And so when I came out of Scientology, I was a fucking asshole. And it took years and years, and I've said this so many times before, right? It just took years to unwind that assholery, to kind of come down from your pedestal and realize that other people's ideas have validity too, jerk. That just because you thought it doesn't make it right or pure or wonderful or true. Right? And I really thought for a long time that, I just couldn't think a wrong thought. And if I said it, this is how it is. Because obviously I can think it and logic it through. Can't you non-critical thinking jerk, right? I mean, I used to lay it on pretty thick. And I don't know that I still don't sometimes. It's a nasty, nasty habit to have. And I have never considered that that somehow I'm the exception to not having that. I all this stuff I'm talking about was kind of, I had to look in the mirror pretty goddamn hard to see that in myself and try to tune it down and try over and over and over again to bring it down and get off that goddamn pedestal. One of the difficulties in coming down off the pedestal, if I'm being really honest right now, is it feels really good to be there. It feels really great to have certainty and a stability in yourself that you are all that in a bag of chips, right? That you really are the shit. You know, it's a wonderful place to be. Unless you want to get along with people. Then it kind of sucks, right? So, you know, so I don't want to I guess I don't want to harp too long on this, but I want to give it, you know, a good enough look, right? It's kind of one of those things that you see it, and then you see it more, and then you see it more, right? And as you do, you can do whatever work you can do to try to dissolve that narcissistic bullshit and kind of try to not be that way anymore, right? In somebody like me, it's assisted by, you know, certain other things. You know, ADHD is a real doozy. Because of, at least for me, the way my mind works, it's very structural, very systemic thinking, right? I think that way. And so, so I couldn't really, I could logic my way into putting other people down really easily. And that wasn't super nice. That wasn't always I wasn't always the nicest, best version of myself, right? And the more I learned about this stuff, the more clear it became as to why, you know. And that's why I sort of throw this stuff out there is hard lessons for me, maybe hard lessons for you, but hopefully as a result of learning them or learning about them, we can just do better, you know. Try to do better with other people, try to do better with accepting other people's ideas, other people's realities, other people's emotions, right? Because this isn't just a logic thing. This isn't just a thing that exists at the level of ideas. This exists with, I mean, me and my significant others, right? My wife and other people in my life, my friends. You know, it gets right in the way of your ability to have compassion for them. They're having a hard time, and it's like, yeah, whatever. You know, you could be that way because it's like, you know, kind of carrying over those habits of, well, you're not supposed to be like that, or the world's not supposed to be like that, or that shouldn't be that way, so therefore I don't want to have to deal with it. You know, it's that kind of, my reality is the actual reality, and you know, and if your emotions are getting in my way, well, that sounds like a you problem. And sometimes it is a you problem, but not 100% of the time, right? Sometimes you can be a friend and be there for somebody and just kind of realize they're having a thing. And it, just because you don't understand it or you don't feel that way doesn't mean they don't, or that their feelings aren't valid. You know, for a long time, man, it was like, yeah, whatever. So, all right. Enough of that. Okay. George Smiley asks, if a non-celebrity gave an explanation of the tech to non-Scientologists in the same way Elena Cardone did, would they be in danger of being accused of verbal tech? Yes, but they'd get away with it anyway because it's a public lecture. It all depends on the product you get as to whether you're going to get the beat down or whether you're going to get praised. And the same incident can get you praise and then later get you in trouble, or vice versa, right? It all depends on what effects you're creating in the big wide world. If Elena Cardone gets 1,000 people to buy books or sign up for services, or, you know, be, do, have now, and think favorably about Scientology as a result of it, then she's going to get a lot of cred and a lot of, acknowledgement for that. On the other hand, if there's negative reactions or blowback and things go south for some reason, then here comes the goldenrod, right? Here comes the justice actions. And verbal tech is a crime in Scientology, and she could absolutely be nailed for it. But there's always a line, in a gray area when it comes to dissemination or public relations or explaining Scientology to people. Hubbard says you got to get people to read books, but you got to give them something, right? You got to create some kind of front-loaded value for people to hook up to or connect with. And this is what Hubbard was messing around with in the 50s with the Golden Dawn lectures and attempting to do, public intro lectures and stuff like that and explain some basic Scientology principles to people and figure out a way to get people to get it. And there is something, by the way, I don't know if how many of you all know about this. There's a thing called the Anatomy of the Human Mind course that was developed in the 1960s in South Africa, and there was a guy on TV in Italy who had a great deal of success with this. He delivered this Anatomy of the Human Mind course that Hubbard had come up with for years and years on, if I remember right, on Italian cable access or something, and got a bunch of people into Scientology that way. I think he got featured in an event. That's how I learned about it. So explaining Scientology or explaining basic principles of Scientology is a necessary thing. And you can't just say, well, you can't do that because of verbal tech. But once you're, the line in the sand with verbal tech, if we're being real about it, happens once you get past that frontline public division stuff and you as an individual are now in the church doing services, doing classwork, getting auditing, and you have a conversation with somebody else in the lobby or in the lunch or something, right? Talking tech. And you're like, well, yeah, you could assess an ARC break and check for affinity, check for reality, but, maybe with communication, you might have to do this and this. And somebody else goes, no. When you're doing an ARC break, you have to do this and this and this. That's the point where somebody's going to come in. If they observe you having a conversation like that in the lobby or in the lunchroom or something, hey man, that's verbal tech. Knock it off. You guys have a question about how to do an ARC break, go in the course room, open up the bulletin and read it. Stop talking about it. You're not going to argue out how to do it. Verbal tech. That's more the context in which verbal tech is seen as a problem, right? If that makes sense. All right. Cool. Let's flip over, before I forget, to the email question we got from Michael Yoder. He asked, listening to a lecture on the e-meter from LRH 1970 to auditors, he talked about the Joburg sec check. Just wondering how this is different from other sec checks. Doing a search, it seems to be more intense than other checks. Okay. You're right. The Johannesburg security check, the Joburg, was the first written down security check form. There are two different ways in Scientology that you can be put into a confessional or a security check. One of them is a pre-made list of questions that gets used, and the other is a tailor-made security check with questions written specifically for you. And that tailor-made sec check wouldn't be used on anybody else. It's just for you. And that could be proposed or written by an auditor or a case supervisor. And then, you're put in the hot seat and asked those questions. The Joburg is like I said, is a pre-made form, and it was the first one. It was, I think it was 1960 that they came up with it. It was written down in South Africa. That's why it's called the Joburg. No other significance than that. There are questions on the Joburg that are interestingly South Africa specific, like, have you stolen or smuggled in diamonds or something, right? Things like that. But it's a pretty thorough sec check. In fact, I wonder if I don't have it here on my machine, that I might be able to show it to you. Let me take a moment and see. If I have it, it might be in here. Let me see if it is. I'm opening up a PDF right now of these policies I was using. When I was doing the show with Alex on Wednesday. Let's see if we've got this in here. It has to search through this document for me. I don't think it's going to be in here because I think it's in the technical volumes. I don't think it's in the policy volumes, even though it should be. Let me see. Yeah, it is 2 N's. Thank you for your patience. But this security check is used on grade 1 of Scientology. Every Scientologist ends up receiving this security check as part of their, grade 2, as part of their path up the bridge. So everybody's going to get asked these questions on an e-meter, and it's pretty intense form. I don't have it here with me, so sorry that I went off looking for it. But yeah, it's mandatory. That's how it's different from other sec checks. There are not any other forms that are mandatory for you to receive, at least not that I know of. Well, I guess the ELIG sec check that comes up after you go clear. There's another form that every single person receives called the OT eligibility sec check. So that's also mandatory. Not sure what else to say about it. There isn't anything really special about the Joburg except that it's pretty long and thorough, but and asks, I said some pretty funny questions about, smuggling diamonds and stuff. But otherwise, no, Michael, nothing else really particularly unusual or strange about it. So, yeah, I think that's about all I can say on that one. Okay, make sure you get those questions in the question box. Good. Let's see what else we've got here. What's the difference between altering and alter-ising? Mescanin used the term in an old video, hyping the video terminals at ideal orgs. Okay, great question. I'm going to think about something here for a second. We've got some time if you want me to go deep on this. I'm going to try to be real simple, though. I don't want to go super, super deep. It might get weird. In Scientology, there is a belief that the only reason that everything in the world around you exists is because you're actively creating it right now. You, me, everybody. When Hubbard says reality is agreement, he means that we are all agreeing mutually in a collective delusion that all of this is real. We've all agreed that it is so, that this stuff is stuff and it's there and we can pick it up and do stuff with it, and we have bodies. Bodies are part of this. All of the existence of matter, energy, space, and time is our agreement. That's an important thing to know about Scientology. The rest of what I'm about to say doesn't make any sense if that's not clear. So the way that a Thetan, spiritual entity, right, creates this stuff is by considering that it exists. They kind of put it out there. They imagine it to be a thing and then have the ability to manifest that imaginative idea as a real thing. But it won't persist. Hubbard says that in order to get something to persist through time, you have to alter it. It's just because that's what he said, right? There is a philosophical basis for it. Let me see if I can get there, but that part's clear, right? If a thetan creates a pen, right? Boom, pen. There it is. It will disappear as quickly as it appears. It's there and then it's not there. That's called isness. That's creating an isness. It's there, but then it's gone. So in order to have persistence, you have to alter something about it. Because and the reason for this, I hope this doesn't sound ludicrous. It is ludicrous, but I hope I'm explaining this in a way that's easy to understand. Hubbard says that the isness of a thing vanishes because you're seeing it. The thetan is viewing it exactly as it is. So he creates it, but in that moment of creation, it vanishes because the thetan is viewing it exactly as it is. And in Hubbard's conception of reality, of objective reality, of real reality, of the way Hubbard really thinks things really are, he says thetans will create things all the time and then they vanish. And so the way that you get that persistence is to alter something so that you're not seeing it as it really is anymore. You've introduced an alteration, a lie, something about it that isn't true so that it will continue to persist through time, because you can't get rid of it, because you can't see it as it really is, because it's got this lie, this alteration introduced into it. It doesn't matter what the alteration is. It doesn't matter if you're lying about the space, the time, the matter, the energy, all of it, none of it. It doesn't matter what the lie connected with the thing is, but you have to introduce some kind of alteration. Okay, that's it. That's what an alter-isness is it's that alteration that you entered into an isness so as to create persistence. And if all of that sounds like utter garbage and gobbledygook, that's pure Scientology. And when I was asked I think it was last week, about the cues and the logics and the pre-logics and stuff, everything I just said is just the tip of the iceberg of how weird it gets when you get into that stuff. It's complicated, weird shit. But I hope that makes sense. It's not just altering a thing. It's altering the fundamental nature of the thing so as to have it persist through time. Because nobody can as is it. Nobody can see it for what it is and make it vanish. Because it's got this lie connected to it. Okay. Let's carry on. George Smiley. What would you advise those stuck in the hell of Scientology arbitration? Should they bring up that it is squirreled, bring up the private lives of their interrogators? It's a no-win situation, I know. Yeah, George, man, do I hear you on this one. This arbitration stuff boils my blood. I can't even read the documents all the way through from, Valeska and Gawain and them on this thing, because I just get so infuriated over the way that Scientology is taking advantage of the situation to further traumatize the people they've already victimized. Let's further victimize them and laugh at them and call them names and think that their claims are ridiculous and disregard the law in the process. Kathy Frazier is a moron of the highest level, and I say that advisedly. She's literally a cult-created, stupid person. She's not genetically or intellectually stupid, but the cult makes her stupid. and makes her into the worst possible version of herself. And she is pretty fucking bad. Kathy Frazier is hell on wheels, man. All these people are involved with this arbitration stuff. If you have been reading Tony's blog, you know who and what I'm talking about. And if you don't, well, I'd invite you to do so, because it's pretty wild stuff, what's being gotten away with by Scientology right now under the guise of religious arbitration. Where you think judge, objective person moderating or mediating a disagreement or problem or issue, and let's see what the rules and the laws are, and let's break this all down and figure out who did what and what you guys do, and let me weigh all this information. That is not at all how Scientology arbitration is being conducted. It's a pure kangaroo court, star chamber kind of activity, right? Where you're guilty the moment you've walked in the door, and all the people in the room are really just wanting to hurt you. The Scientologists who engage in this arbitration stuff are doing so out of the very worst of intentions towards the ex-Scientologists who are trying to get justice, right? And they are not in any way, shape, or form, those Scientologists who are doing this, do not care and are not going to hear and are not at all going to give a shit about the people who Scientology victimized, right? So there isn't any successful strategy when you're in a situation like that to navigate it. The only success is get the hell out of there. The fact that they're enduring it the way that they are is heroic. That's why I've used words like that to describe the people who go through this. Valerie Haney, Valeska, Gawain, his wife. This is, whose name I'm forgetting, so I'm sorry about that. It's so wrong on so many levels. But they started a process that has to be done by somebody. Here's the heroic part. They know all this. They know everything I'm saying, right? It's not like I'm schooling any of the arbiters here, right? I'm just trying to tell you guys how rough this is for them. They knew going into this how hard it was going to be. And maybe they had ideas of, how this might be sidestepped or that might be avoided. But you're walking into a situation where Scientology holds all the cards. And you have no power at all in that situation. And it's always like that when you're in Scientology. But to leave, to escape, to get out, and then put yourself back into that place so as to endure a process that somebody has to endure, so that we can get to the end of it. And because of the rules and structures of how courts in America and how arbitration rules are set up, and how religious arbitration is set up, and the First Amendment is set up, you have to endure this entire process before you can come back to the court and go, Judge, this was ridiculous, a ridiculous abuse of power. So but somebody has to do that. And Valerie and these three in this labor trafficking suit are doing that. And that's what makes them heroes, because they know there is no positive outcome. There is no spin. There's no way possible for them to get justice from Scientology. It is literally an impossible feat. And they know that going in, and they do it anyway, so that they can have a possibility. There's a hope that at the end of this picture, a judge will rule that this entire asinine bullshit process isn't valid, and that Scientology can go fucking suck eggs, right, with their religious arbitration. But for now, they're going to use it as hard and as badly as they can, right? All of this, You mentioned here in the question, should they bring up that it is squirreled? It's not even squirreled. There is no arbitration process in Scientology. So there's nothing to squirrel, right? All they're doing is rolling it out on all they're doing is taking advantage of the situation, right? Yeah, definitely don't bring up the private lives of their interrogators. There's no thing you're going to say or do in that room that's going to change anything about what's happening or its outcome. Every bit of resistance that you show, every bit of frustration that you show they're just drinking your tears, right? The Scientologists who are put in that room, Kathy Frazier, these others, their minds are gone. Their compassion is gone. Their ability to empathize with you as a human being is completely erased in that context. Maybe there's an intervention for Kathy Frazier at some point. Maybe there's some place, some context where Kathy Frazier can get her head out of her ass. But it ain't that context. So there is nothing you're going to say or do that is going to help the situation or make it any better when you're in that situation, right? And I don't know that I would be able to endure something like that. And that's why I really, really think that those who are heroic. They are doing what the rest of us can't do. That's what a hero is, right? And I just don't have enough words of praise and admiration for them. And support, right? I really want them to take this thing all the way, because there's no other way we're going to beat this arbitration thing than somebody doing this. But it's just no win. There is no win here. No way out of that now, right? Okay. Let me also just comment on this real fast, just to make a point. One of the reasons for my podcast this week, or to talk about that stuff that I talked about in my podcast, is to explain exactly why things like this religious arbitration are happening in the first place, right? Because it's not really a long game success for Miscavige to do this. It's going to backfire on him eventually. And it would be so much easier and long term, it would be much more secure and stabilizing for Scientology to deal with these cases differently than they do, right? Fair game and all the work that OSA does is ultimately self-destructive for Scientology. It will not be able to continue doing that forever. Not sustainable. But Miscavige doesn't think. So he doesn't think that way, right? That was one of the points I wanted to make in that podcast about that whole impulse-driven, stomach-driven stuff, right? Is this whole religious arbitration thing is kind of like that. It's one of those like illogical, why are we even doing this in the first place? This has a time limit. And it's going to rebound on us, and it's going to rebound bad because we're abusing people and we're re-victimizing them, and we're getting away with it for now. But anybody with a brain can know they're not going to get away with it forever. But Miscavige doesn't think that way because he's in the moment. I just another way to highlight that, but I thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, X-Cyan. What have you done to change the way you present in front of the camera now compared to when you first started to do podcasts? You're much better at it now, and I'd like to know how. Oh, thank you for that. I don't think I'm any better at it, but thank you. I think I got a better camera. Got a better soundboard. I don't know what to say to this. There's certainly the experience of talking on a mic over and over and over again for hundreds and hundreds of hours, gets you familiar with it. And comfortable with it, more comfortable with it. My biggest problem is repeating myself, and I'm trying to not do that as much now. Before that, my biggest problem, I thought, was ums and uhs and ers, right? And after you kind of stop thinking that's important, it goes away. I think focusing all my attention on having something to say and then saying it as best I can is how I tend to get through videos or get through the work. I do a lot more live now than I used to, a lot more, right? I've switched over a lot of live stuff. And that changes how you do the work because, I'm not scripting everything first. Like my podcast yesterday I did, but most of the time I'm not pre-scripting or pre-arranging, and that makes it a lot faster and easier to get content out, to get videos made. All I got to do is turn on the mic and turn on the camera and go. It's much more time consuming to pre-produce stuff, but you get a better product in terms of being able to bring graphics and other things into it too, right? But that was a choice because I just wanted to get more stuff out and make it easier on myself to deliver my messages. I used to be much more focused on getting the right script and putting it all together right and spending a lot of time fine-tuning it. And then, I don't know what happened exactly, but I got more interested in doing live stuff. And it felt the more I did it, the easier it got. I don't know that it got any better in quality, but because I judge myself very, very badly. I'm the worst judge of myself. I've proven that over and over and over again. So I struggle in answering this question, as you can see. So I'm going to move on now. But anyway, thank you for that. Anthony Spurgeon, did Hubbard ever lecture in Texas? My answer is no, but I'm thinking right now because I want to ever go to Texas. I don't recall Hubbard giving any lectures or talks in Texas. No congresses, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. No. XJW Vernon, what kind of potential wrecking of the country can Trump do with 2 years left of his presidency? Oh, dude, the list is long. Let me say one thing. I'm not going to, you guys know I don't want to go on a thing here, but let me throw one thing at you. And I would recommend that you watch a channel by a man named Peter Zeihan. He's a really smart guy. The World Trade Organization is dismantling right now. And the World Trade Organization is post-World War II, post-World War I, Depression, World War II. The world order changed to where the United States became a security guarantor of trade across the planet. Our military became everybody's military in terms of controlling and protecting trade routes. And if you think about the world prior to something like an American guarantee of trade routes, you had what? You had different countries trying to trade with one another, and over the oceans, you had navies that had to protect trade vessels. Otherwise, they would be pirated. There would be pirates out there, and not just independent pirates, but state-sponsored piracy. And so one country could pirate off of another country without being at war or, open hostilities. There could be those levels of hostilities. And when you have a number of countries, tens of countries in the world, trying to engage in, global trade and fighting one another, or afraid of one another, or having to militarily challenge one another, or be aware of the fact that they could be challenged at any point, and their goods and services, goods really, right? We're talking about physical trade. This was a problem. And America solved this problem by saying, look, we will deal with that. We will make sure these trade routes are safe and secure for everybody. And in exchange for that, we get to write your security policies. We get to be the ones basically in charge of your country's external security, at least when it comes to those aspects of it. And you guys are going to benefit from this enormously. And everybody did benefit from this enormously. It really did work this way. That they didn't have to invest money or their economic resources in their own military. I don't know if you all checked, but militaries are expensive. And for a country to have to invest half of its resources in military and the other half in economic, factories and trade and resource management and asset management, stuff like that, if you can invest more in the economic side of things, you can make life better for everybody in your country, because you're not having to worry about protecting all of them. America's doing that. Or you don't have to worry about protecting those trade routes, because America's got your back, right? And this is global. This is the thing, amongst other things, that allowed globalization to happen in the first place. And for the world to stop being a patchwork mosaic of sovereign states who were at war with one another every couple of years, or fighting one another for resources all the time. This comes off of the philosophic idea that if countries are reliant on one another for trade, they're not going to go to war with one another. And this is what allowed that and facilitated that trade to happen in higher volume and more easily, without countries having to come up with their own treaties 20 different times with 20 different countries. America could just have their back. All of that's going away. All of that is going away because of our isolationist stance now. And this has been years in the making, but Trump has accelerated the process enormously and ruining our reputation and credibility in the process. So it's not just that he's pulling in the flippers and saying, okay, we're not going to do globalization anymore, and we want to go back to this, mosaic of anarchy, right, where every country is basically only engaged with themselves. And we're going to have to figure out whole new alliances and whole new trade agreements planet-wide because of what America's doing right now. That's one thing that's happening and changing right now that you're not reading about or seeing anybody talking about on CNN or MSNBC or Fox. Yet everything I just said is very, very very, very real and very, very much happening right now. The entire structure of how you get stuff is changing radically. And there isn't any part of your life that isn't going to be affected by that. It's just that it takes time for it to happen. Supply chains, right? Global logistics. So what's going to change? Everything. Everything. Right? Because of the orange wrecking ball and his crew of psychotics who don't understand any aspect of what I just told you about. Not one thing I just told you about has ever entered into Donald Trump's headspace as a calculation or thought or consequence of what he's doing in Iran right now, or what he's doing with tariffs, or what he's doing with NATO, or what he's doing with our allies. None of that ever entered his head. That's why I made the podcast yesterday, was to try to finally explain why none of that enters his head. Because it can't. Y'all think, oh, he's got some 4D chess he's playing. Dude, Trump doesn't even know what chess is. And he would be infinitely bored before you could explain what a pawn is. He just doesn't have the capacity to go there. So I really, really, really wish people would stop trying to sane wash him that way. I wish people would stop trying to sane wash all the predators that way, but especially him. Because the damage that he's doing right now is incalculable and very, very, very much not being reported on. You guys, we don't know the half of it, right? Because our media isn't telling us. They don't know how to deal with post-truth populist leadership, politicians, right? Messaging. And they don't know how to deal with somebody who has a level of narcissistic personality disorder and other conditions, other neurodivergent conditions that Trump has, right? They don't know how to deal with it. They have no idea how to report on it. Their very idea of talking about Trump's narcissism is just anathema. They just can't let themselves go there. But the fact that that's true has denied you and me accurate news reporting for over a decade now, because they won't go there. That's just bad taste. Well, that's just your opinion, man. Look around the world right now. Is Trump's narcissism an opinion? I don't think so. And I think anybody who can't see that at this point. See, my biggest problem over all these years has been so frustrated. I've been so frustrated about the fact that other people can't see what I see. But I'm more trained than everybody else, and I didn't think about that enough. I'm more educated in this shit than most people are, and I didn't allow for that. And I know that that's bled over into a lot of my communication. I know that. But it is what it is, right? And people just aren't. And even if I communicated in the most melodious, harmonious, beautiful words in the most beautiful way, people still just don't want to hear it. And you can't communicate things to people who don't want to hear it. That's a fact, And way, way, way too many people have just not wanted to hear the truth. It's a sucky situation when it comes to stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why people don't want to hear about what's coming, right? Because it's bad enough right now, they think. And they really have no idea how bad things can get. People in America have no idea how bad things can actually get. They think they do, but they don't. They got to talk to their grandparents and their great-grandparents about the Great Depression before they really start getting it in their head how bad things can get here. It's just unreal to them. They just could never happen here. That's probably, if I think about it, that's probably the phrase that enables all of this. It could never happen here. Always remember, people. So a lot. So anyway, Vernon, and I've just brought up a couple things, right? I mean, there's longer term things happening like population decline, but in terms of Trump and what other damage he can do over the next 2 years, ICE has just gotten started. The internment camps have just gotten started. The ICE camps, the migration camp, the immigrant camps, right? They're just getting started. Do you think any of that went away? You think because Kristi Noem got fired, ICE isn't on the job anymore? You know, I mean, they're getting rid of TSA so ICE can take over, right? Because ICE is the modern Gestapo for MAGA, and it won't go away if a Democrat suddenly comes into power as the president. All of this stuff doesn't just disappear tomorrow, right? If you think that there's some reset button, there isn't. The past is over. We're never going back to it. We can slow down the decline that's happening right now if we got smart. But I don't see any Democrats who are smart. So I'm struggling to understand how or see how we could get there. I know where we could go, but I don't know how we could get there. So I struggle with that one. That's where I get frustrated. Ex-Scion. In your experience, were harsh and very mean personal criticisms discouraged or encouraged in TR0 Bullbait? Oh, no. You flat out. There's no discouraging anything when it comes to harsh or very mean personal criticisms. In TR0 Bullbait, in Scientology, when you're doing that drill, you're faced 3 feet apart from another person, and the coach gets to say or do anything. Now, we drew the line at hitting a person. You couldn't just sit there and slap somebody or assault them. That would be a big no-no. We would not let somebody do that. But you could say anything. Anything. And most of the reservations, most of the reason why it didn't get as bad as it could get is because most people aren't willing to go there. Right? Most coaches who were coaching TR0 Bullbait would tell some jokes or try to make the person laugh or do, things that would be silly or obnoxious. But they got their own censors, right? And they're in a course room where other people are listening to them. So it's not like you're taking this person you're bullbaiting into a room and, you get to say anything and nobody's listening. So you always know as a coach that you have an audience. And if you're loud as a coach, you have a voice like I do, then everybody's going to hear what you're saying. And so, you don't want to embarrass yourself or go too far or get judgment from other people. It's a very human process, right? The bull baiting. So those kind of things, as a supervisor who supervised people doing TRs for years and years, this is what I saw all the time, right? Is I would actually sometimes have to goad the coach into getting harder. No, man, this isn't any good, right? You're not coaching him hard enough. Let's go, right? Get in there, right? And you might, try some stuff, but that's what I observed. But as far as the rules and the structure of it goes, you can get away with anything. Vernon, can the Aftermath Foundation use your book to help the people that have left Scientology? Maybe even give them a copy of your book to start their lives again. Yeah, I was going to talk to Claire about that. And Claire has a book coming out too, by the way. And Rachel's just put a book out. There are a lot of good books out there and material out there on cult recovery. And mine is the latest one. And I happen to think it's a good one, of course. But I don't know that the Aftermath is going to want to play favorites with that, right? Which I think is why I'm not going to go, hey, guys, here's my book, and why don't you buy 20 copies, and let's give one to everybody. I don't think that's necessarily what the Aftermath is going to want to do, but I'll definitely talk to Claire about it. But, yeah. But it's there. This is going to be there for people, and I'm sure that we will be able to get it into people's hands. I don't want to come off right now like this is the only book on cult recovery there is, and if you don't read this, you're completely screwed. I don't think that's true. But I do think that this is going to bypass an awful lot of confusion, and it's going to give people ideas and expose them to things that they might end up, if they didn't have this book, they're going to bumble their way through things that they really don't need to. It's not necessary, right? That's why I wrote this, is to try to help people not stumble as much in this process, because there's road signs and guideposts, but sometimes they're hidden, and sometimes they're not, or they're not obvious, and so so I hope that that's what this will fill in the blanks for people. Angry Choad, who are the most washed up celebrities in your opinion? Would you hang out in Barbados? What do you think about hot dogs? All right, another medley from Choad. I'm going to say Rob Schneider, I think, is the most washed up celeb I can think of right now. I can't stand that guy. I'll put him on the list. As far as would I hang out in Barbados? Oh, hell yeah, I'd go down to Barbados. I think it'd be fun. What do you think about hot dogs? I like hot dogs, but I don't want to know how they're made. I already do know how they're made, but anyway, yeah. No, hot dogs are great. I really do. I seriously, I really like hot dogs. In fact, I love chili dogs. Oh, yeah. That's where it's at. All right, John O'Nolan, if you could create a new communications course that was effective, what would it look like? Oh, good question. Well, I'd have to do some study, but with what I know now, I'm not a communications expert, but I would probably offer a course that would be a bit of a mix of things. I think it would be a mix of some learning, some book learning about communication theory in the big wide world, not Hubbard's bullshit communication formula, because that doesn't always work out that way. Communication is not always cause, distance, effect with intention, attention, duplication, and understanding, right? It's not that. There are other factors and there's other ways of thinking about it. But it's a nice theory. The communication formula it's a nice idea. It would be nice if human communication simplified to a simple formula like that, but it doesn't. So, language theory and communication theory is really, really fascinating stuff. Especially some of the modern takes on certain aspects of stuff with language and stuff. It's really, really interesting. But you don't really need to go that deep in order to become a good communicator. It's not that hard. It's a matter of I would offer classwork that would be some degree of theory, about what communication is, what you're trying to do, right? I don't think it's that far off to say that when you're communicating something to somebody else or a group of people, you're trying to impart an idea to them or get them to duplicate what you're putting out. I don't think that's, that bizarre of an idea. But the ways and means of doing that are far more numerous and various than L. Ron Hubbard suggests. And I think that's what would need to be covered, right? But once that was covered, I would want people to practice a couple different things. I would want them to practice interpersonal communication with another person, but not necessarily sitting in a chair 3 feet apart doing TRs, but some kind of practical drills or exercises a person can do. Because I don't think there's any way to overcome the shyness and introversion of people than to get them to do that work. Practice it, right? Until they overcome their shyness or introversion. And it's possible to do. It just takes some confidence, and confidence comes from successfully doing something, right? That's just learning 101. So I would set up situations where people could successfully, eventually, successfully learn how to communicate on an interpersonal level. And I would also set up as part of the classwork speaking publicly to a group of people, not just one person. So we might start with one and move up to doing some, sort of, I imagine on the same order as what was that group that would do the, I just had it in my head and I forgot. Toastmasters was a group of people that get together to hone their public speaking skills, and I think they take it to a redonkulous degree because they kind of don't know what else to do with themselves. But the idea of practicing in front of other people who are willing to tell you maybe what you're doing wrong, and you're there willing to learn and listen to what they have to say, right? I think that could be some interesting back and forth feedback on doing, public level speaking, and I think that would be part of it. So that's my framework for how I might go about putting something like that together. Xian, do you have a favorite wine or other drink besides Coke? What do you do to keep fit? Jog, walk, work out. Okay, I drink a lot of Coke. I'll admit it. I definitely drink more Coke than anything else. Water, milk, juice. Drink a lot of juice. Gatorade, electrolytes through. I do Gatorade or what's that other? There's something that's not quite so sugary that I can also drink for electrolytes, but I don't. That's just when it gets hot and stuff, Let's see. I don't like wine, and I don't ever drink wine of any kind. Champagne, wine, never liked it, never want to go near it, never. I've tried a lot of different kinds. White wine, red wine, this wine, that wine, blue wine, orange wine. No, not my thing. Thank you for the comments on my haircut, by the way. Let's see. Yeah. And then what do I do to keep fit? I walk my dog. Yeah, I know. It's that bad. I don't really have a workout routine or anything like that. My life isn't structured that way. Yeah. Okay. And looks like might be our last question here. TM, if you could be a fly on the wall anywhere within the Scientology organization right now, where do you think would be the most interesting to listen to? Ooh. Obviously, the first answer that comes to mind is wherever David Miscavige is located, right? His office or offices. But, I'm awful interested in probably because I came from Scientology management and I was there for so long in the Sea Org. I'm really, really curious about how things are being run at the International Liaison Office, the ILO, right? The international layer of middle management. We already know gold base has been stripped for parts and is basically down to, whoever's there doing whatever the useless work they're doing, because there really isn't much of anything useful coming out of gold base. We also know that Scientology Media Productions is engaged in just nothing but, PR masturbation, right? All they do is create high glossy, high production value videos for Scientology that nobody watches. And that's just a spin bin of nonsense. So there's nothing useful to hear or see there that I think would be of any consequence, right? I don't really care what Scientology's next release is or what their next spin is for, their next new campaign launch or something, because they're never going to address the elephant in the room and they're never going to get their shit together. So I don't have to worry about, what their next big thing is. It's going to be something ridiculous. But I'm curious how they're keeping it going. That's what I'm curious about. And I'm curious about David Miscavige's psychology. But I don't know how to learn more about that, because he's not honest with anybody. So there's nobody who has known David Miscavige who can give you an accurate rendition of what that man is actually all about. They can only give you their experience of him. And I've run into enough people over the years and talked deeply with them about David Miscavige and their experiences with him to say that. Everybody's got their slice of experience, but nobody has the inner picture. And so I don't know that we're ever going to get the inner picture of that guy, But the two places that are of interest to me are Miscavige's office, right, or wherever he is, and the commanding officer of the ILO, right? I would like to be a fly on the wall in that room and observe what that person does all day and how they're doing what they're doing to run Scientology on a day-to-day. Because when we talk about, like in the podcast yesterday, how the leader outsources, make it all happen to other people, ILO is that people, is that group of people who are making it happen in Scientology. It's not Gold-Base. It's not Scientology Media Productions. They're not running shit, right? They're just promotion factories. It's ILO that actually keeps Scientology going. And I'm curious how they do that. Yeah. So that's and then I guess the third on the list would be the commanding officer of OSA International. That might be an interesting place to be, just in terms of strategies and tactics and approaches they're using or formulating to deal with, the human trafficking case, or, Valerie Haney's case, or some of the other things they're up to, by the way, because there's all kinds of stuff that Scientology gets up to that you guys don't know anything about. That's not major, but it's not insignificant. I mean, there's stuff that Scientology is doing at the United Nations, at the UN, that nobody talks about, as far as influence peddling and the way that Scientology has inculcated itself into the anti-cult, or into the cult space, with cult apologists and government NGO institutions and government institutions that have to do with lawmaking, that have to do with policy making, that have to do with religion. Scientology's got its fingers in all kinds of pies that y'all might not know too much about. So that's why COSA might be an interesting place to hang out too, to learn about all of those places that Scientology's got its little fingers right now that we're not talking about or don't know about, right? That would be very, very interesting. All right. Nora asks, does Scientology still try to interfere in your life? No, not really. I got trolled last week by somebody who was not Laura Anderson, and I don't think that was Scientology trolling me. I don't think for a second that was Scientology trolling me. They leave me alone. I haven't seen any evidence of Scientology coming after me in a long, long time. They did, and they could always come back around, but no, I don't really see them interfering in my life in any significant way. They interfere in my life through online anonymous accounts and trolls and private investigators who never reveal themselves. So there could be things going on in my life right now that are stemming from the Church of Scientology. There are certainly no shortage of trolls and complainers on the internet about me that are certainly coming out of OSA. I have no doubt about that. I don't think they have to come to my house to feel like they're doing something about me. And I think that they hire people, or they have Scientologists directly, anonymously, right, with troll accounts and whatnot, go all over the internet and bitch and moan about me. I do think that that's true. And it's not to say that all the people who complain about me on the internet are working for OSA. I don't think that's true. I think there's plenty of people I've pissed off over the years, and they hold grudges, So I don't think that it's all Scientology, but I think it exists. I think that happens. And I think it happens a lot, because there are the same things said about me over and over and over again. And I know that they are said over and over and over again specifically to push my buttons, because they used to push my buttons. And they don't push my buttons in the same way anymore than they used to. But you used to be able to get a rise out of me by saying certain things. And you don't get that rise from me anymore, but they still say it because they want to. They want me to react, So that happens. Yeah, I think that's Scientology related or adjacent. But I think that I get a lot more direct attacks against me and my character and my credibility and my education from other ex-Scientologists who forgot that Scientology is the enemy and thought I'm the enemy, right? And I can't do anything about those people. So I just kind of keep doing what I'm doing. All right. Dandy Warhol, did you watch the Coachella stream? I did not. I did think it was funny, though, that Justin Bieber YouTubed it in. I thought that was a little funny. And I thought Katy Perry's line, gee, I hope he has YouTube Premium so we don't have to see ads. I thought that, if you saw that, I thought that was pretty damn funny. Not a big Katy Perry fan, but I thought that was a funny line. Anyway, no, Coachella is not of any interest to me whatsoever. I really couldn't care less about it. Seriously, I really couldn't care less. Just not my thing. Okay, so yes, Love Food Kitchen. I think Shelly. Let's go ahead and just wrap this up here. I think that Shelly is the only person who could give me. No, let me phrase this differently. I think Shelly Miscavige, out of Scientology and away from Scientology long enough to get her head straight, could give incredibly insightful statements about David Miscavige's mindset and psychology in a way no one else could. I think that's true. And I think that's never, ever going to happen because I don't think Shelly's ever going to leave. But never say never. Never say never. You never, never know. And I will be happy to eat my words on that one. If Shelly escapes tomorrow and jumps the fence, there would be nobody happier for her than me. I would be so happy for her to do that. And boy, does she have some explaining to do because she's got blood on her hands. Literally. She was clean up after David Miscavige when he would beat up on people. Right? Again, let's talk about that podcast yesterday and the enablers going and cleaning up the messes of the narcissist. Right? That's Shelly Miscavige. Top of the list of David Miscavige enablers. And she's paying the price. And she will be paying the price for the rest of her life if she doesn't jump that fence. It's up to her, you know? And I get to say shit like that because it was up to me to get out, and I did. And I know she can. So I'm not looking down on her. I don't say any of this out of spite. I don't say any of this out of meanness. I want her to jump the fence really bad, you know? I just know in the place that she is and the headspace she's in, that is really hard to do. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's what we got. So let me wrap up the show today by telling you guys in a week and a day, not a week from tomorrow, we are doing the book launch event. And it's not a live stream on this channel. It's going to be a separate event that you need to sign up for. It's free. You don't have to pay anything to go to the book launch, and it's going to be fun. So I hope you guys will check that out. I have kept the link to that in the description section of, it'll be in this video, last week's video, the videos I'm posting right now. I'm putting links up to that, and I've been sharing it on the community tab of my YouTube channel as well. You can go to that and get updates on what's happening with the book, and I've been posting stuff about it. I'm again super, super excited about this. And there's going to be the book release, and then a few weeks or month or two after that, we will get the audiobook out, and there is going to be a workshop that we are going to be holding, which is going to we're going to go over this book once a week. We're going to cover a chapter, and it's going to take us 20 weeks to get through. and it's going to be quite the workshop. And that is a paid thing. You'll be able to get discounts and stuff on that if you go to the book launch event. So I hope you will go to that. And I hope you will check out the book, and I hope that you will be part of the workshop, because that's going to be an hour a week kind of engagement with me to go over the chapter and answer any questions. And I am really keen to hear your feedback on this book and what questions you have. And because that's going to inform, future work. So please do consider being part of that. And that whole workshop, by the way, is going to be recorded all 2021. I'd say either 2021 weeks, because we have the intro and the 20 chapters. So once we've got all that done, that's going to be available on my Patreon page, and you'll be able to have access to it if you sign up for a certain. We'll figure out what the numbers are, but if you sign up for a certain level of membership, then you'll have access to that whole workshop. And it's going to be an ongoing enrollment thing, where even if you miss the first week or 2 or 3 or whatever, you can have access to those earlier recordings right away of the workshop and be part of it for the rest of the live shows. So I hope that all makes sense. And with all of that, thanks very much for coming around, listening to me blabber on at a mad rate about all the things I do. And I hope that my answers this week were informative, educational, and entertaining as always. And I will see you guys next week. Actually, you will have another live with me and Alex Barnes-Ross on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. You can count on that. I've got a bunch of recording and stuff I'm doing this week, so I'm not sure if I've got any other live shows I'll be doing this week. I am preparing a video that will be probably a pre-recorded, pre-made video rather than a live, but I am preparing a video on gay conversion therapy. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. I got profanely, about it. But I realized that I am that way without really explaining to you guys. If you haven't seen my podcast, then you don't really maybe understand what that's all about or why I have so much about it. It just makes me see red right away. And I'm going to make a video breaking down why that is. So that's in the works right now, and some other stuff too, in addition to this book launch. So lots going on here. Thanks for coming around and listening to me, and